Hello, this is Shan Chandrasekar welcoming you to another delightful part of our programming. We have a very distinguished guest in the program here with us today. He's got an extraordinary background in the field of education and politics as well. None other than Hon.Bryon Wilfert. Bryon, what a pleasure to see you again.
Shan, it's great to see you. You're looking very well.
Thank you, and likewise, you too.
Thank you. We haven't changed a bit.
Yeah, that's good. I think I've done several interviews with you in the past, but it's wonderful that you've come to our new broadcast center and studio.
Well, I want to congratulate you on your facility. I had opportunity to look around, and I must say, state of the art. So congratulations, and wish you every success, of course.
Thank you. Bryon, tell me, you've got CTL education at the most appropriate time. So we're going to go into the details, the philosophy, the key result areas, the objectives of CTL. But before that, tell me about this pandemic and its incredible impact on education.
The pandemic has had such a significant impact because, of course, students normally learn in a classroom. We are all social animals, and the ability to deal directly with teachers on a one-on-one basis. After school, as an example. Having now reverted to online education, it means that teachers not only are having to worry about dealing with emails all the time and dealing with parents, with phone calls, etc., but also the fact that some of the learning in some of the public schools and private schools in Ontario and across the country, 2 days in, or maybe 3 days a week, maybe 2 days a week, and there's not the same rhythm. The difficulty is that the pandemic means that students have to focus even more by being in a classroom setting virtually with their teachers. But if teachers don't have the same amount of time, or if a teacher is physically in a classroom with someone for 2 days a week, they also have to worry about, do they have their masks on, make sure that if they sneeze, that they use their arm, etc. So the whole educational process has changed dramatically from the pre-pandemic days.
Interesting. At a time like this, with your vast experience, you have over 20 years as an educator, and then over 25 years nearly as a seasoned municipal politician, and also as a member of parliament in federal politics. Substantial experience, tremendous amount of credibility behind you, by the way.
Thank you.
And you decided to launch CTL. You're the chairman. Tell us about the philosophy behind CTL.
Well, CTL education initially started out dealing with schools overseas, to bring Canadian content overseas. So last year we were in places like Vietnam and Peru, Nigeria, etc. And it was to do physical schools, so that we would partner with physical schools abroad to bring Canadian content to students in those countries. When the pandemic hit, that changed our whole approach, and we had to go to a virtual learning, so doing virtual learning platforms, teaming up with Amazon as an example, plus our own platform that we use. What that meant is that we then looked at local students, particularly how to help those students who may have fallen through the cracks or need particularly tutoring after school, but also the international component, which we can talk about later. But it's significant that the philosophy is that students learn at their own pace, and sometimes we forget that, and we know that not all students are good in mathematics, or all students are good in history. So we really tried to tailor our approach by setting up focus groups, as an example initially, with students and with parents to get a better understanding of how they learn and what they need in order to learn.
One of your concentration is STEM.
Yes.
That stands for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics.
STEM is really the key in terms of what students need to know going forward in this, particularly in this IT age. We also do provide though English and French. But the STEM is really to concentrate on the algebra or on the chemistry or the biology. And that's really the core for a lot of students who want to go to university and learn in those particular disciplines. And so we try to keep our focus relatively narrow, because you can't be all things to all people. Now, the English and the French are added simply because there is a demand. But essentially, the maths and the sciences, particularly for the populations that we're dealing with, that seems to be quite the focus. And we feel that given the educators that we have brought in, many of them with PhDs, MAs, that they can really provide the kind of learning environment for those disciplines.
You also have created a non-profit arm of your organization to deal with Educate Me Canada program. So tell us about it.
Yes, part of that also deals with disadvantaged youth, or what we would say youth at risk. And so to go into communities and to help young students at no charge to be able to provide educational resources for them. Now, obviously, we look for sponsors, and those sponsors help pay the costs of those teachers or educators who are providing the courses to them or the tutoring. But it's to reach those marginalized students who often don't have the same opportunities or success rates. So it is a nonprofit arm. We are, as an education company, obviously we're a profit company, but we know that we have a social responsibility. And a social responsibility is absolutely key when you're dealing with young people in communities, not only in the Greater Toronto area, but across the country.
I understand your educators, have got some impressive qualifications behind them.
Yes.
So describe the people who are associated with you.
Well, we have people with, as I say, PhDs and MAs from around the world. Dr. Resham, who is our coordinator, originally from India. She has an impressive mathematical background, not an area that I was particularly...
She's a graduate from IIT New Delhi.
Yes, she is.
That's IIT is a very prestigious institution.
Very much so.
That's the Indian Institute of Technology.
Thank you, yes. And her leadership has been very, very important. Understanding what it means to not only bring the best and the brightest as educators to the table, but also to understand what those needs of the students are. So we just, for example, just the other day, our president, Sam Varasingham, and myself, and Dr. Resham, met virtually with a number of our educators to see how the program is going. We'll get their feedback, because you're only as good as the people that you're working with, and for them to understand we're there for them as well as they're there for the students.
There is a term that I saw in one of your brochures called smart teaching techniques. What does that mean?
Well, it's more of a holistic approach that we're dealing with students, both from a psychological standpoint, from a leadership standpoint. We want to make sure that students are not just learning about basic algebra, as an example, or basic physics. We want to really delve into, for them, how are they feeling about particular issues. The holistic approach is to gain the most we can out of a student we do psychological tests. Mm-hmm. We make sure that we have a support mechanism. Maybe a day where a student is feeling quite down. So we can set aside certain things to say, okay, well, let's walk through what your concern is. It may not be about that subject, but so that they feel that there is a real support line there. We also, of course, are working very closely with the parents, because too often parents are concerned and are nervous, and rightly so sometimes. What are their child learning? Are they getting the most out of the program that they're participating in? So we try to do the whole circle rather than simply only one piece.
I noticed that somewhere that there's guidance counselors were involved, and you were providing that as well.
Yes, because also for the long term, for a number of these students who are not just doing the tutoring, but maybe taking, obviously, the Ontario curriculum and say they're doing grade 11 or grade 12, and whether they're doing it here as a local student or as an international student abroad, which will give them access eventually to apply for Canadian college or university. It is an opportunity for them as well to understand, by using our methods, to give them the right course. So we don't want to have students often are channeled in directions where they shouldn't be. So having professional guidance counselors, psychologists available, which they can use if they wish, gives them, again, an opportunity to make sure that they are on the right path. Not everyone can be a physicist, or not everyone can be a writer. So let's make sure, though, that where they are strong, we can continue to nurture that and make sure that their courses are such that when they are going to apply to a college or university, that they have the right background in order to be successful in their application.
That includes vocational guidance as well.
That's correct.
Interesting.
We'll be right back after these messages.
Welcome back. We are doing a television special with Hon.Bryon Wilfert. What is meant by free high school support program?
Free high school is something that we're launching to, again, provide for students who not necessarily have the financial wherewithal, parents don't have the financial wherewithal. So that, again, applies particularly to disadvantaged communities where we can reach out. Also working with other organizations. There are a lot of nonprofit organizations out there who are looking for support. They may not be they're not in the educational realm, but they may be in the sports realm. They may be simply in areas where there's social services that they're providing. Could be single mother organizations, and they need that support. So again, we would provide that tutoring for them, again with sponsorship, because by having sponsors, that obviously helps us. I myself and our president, we are longtime Rotarians. Yeah. And Rotary is about, as you well know, service above self. And the social component, which of course, I have to congratulate you personally on the great social work that you do, but it's not just about a business. It's about what do we give back to our communities. And we think that's very important.
Tell me about the youth leadership program, because from what I understand, within the youth, there are different levels of intellectual capacity, and some have got tremendous leadership skills.
Yes, they do, and we want to make sure that we get the most potential out of a student. And leadership, whatever the organization is absolutely key. So we look at some students are good at leadership on a basketball court. Some students are good in public speaking. What we want to do is tap that potential, and what we're hoping to do, and again, COVID has been obviously an obstacle, is to develop a leadership camp in the summertime, both for locally and then for international students. What that will do is to raise the potential of those students in terms of the kind of skill level, bringing in people who are in leadership positions to tap into that. So again, that'll be very, very important as we move towards the leadership camp program. It may be in IT. We have so many students now who are very good on the computer, but how do they want to create programs, for example. And so what we want to do is to show that kind of leadership and then expose them to various companies down the road where they can utilize that. Boards of trade or chambers of commerce often are looking for very high qualified young people who have that, not only the skill, but as we all know, that energy, which is so important.
From what I understand, you've also created access to advanced software programming camps. What does that mean?
That means that, and that's really the leadership of Sam Varasingham, who is our president. Sam is really our technical or technology guru, if you will. And that platform gives students the opportunity to experiment, gives them an opportunity to try different things. One of the things that we say to students is, not everything you do is going to be a success, but we learn from failure as well. And so that will give them an opportunity to do different things that they normally wouldn't be able to do in a controlled platform. Again, giving them access to something which for a lot of students may not have at home, obviously. And also, we will hopefully do it we're doing in a virtual classroom with other students, so that although they're not physically together, they can share ideas together on problem solving with a particular issue on those platforms.
You know, there's a massive volume of international students who have arrived in Canada, particularly from the Indian subcontinent, especially from India. And there's a lot of students in those countries, in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and students of South Asian origin from the West Indies, for that matter, and other parts of the world. You've expanded globally, from what I understand, using cloud technology.
Yes.
Tell us about the opportunity for higher education for them as high school students, how they could use a Canadian curriculum and get familiar with that to be able to qualify for higher studies later on in Canada.
Well, that's an excellent question, and there's no issue there for us by using the Ontario curriculum. A student, whether they're in grade 9 or often we have international students at grade 11 and 12 level who want to complete their course abroad, and then they can apply directly to Canadian or university or college, which are about a quarter the price of U.S. universities. And what that will give them is a strong academic background, also using obviously what they have learned in their home country, but gives them that opportunity then for that application. If they are just doing tutoring, it may strengthen their coursework in their own country, but we are local, but we think international. We think globally. We are all global citizens, and certainly your company has demonstrated that in spades over the years. And we know that we have to look at that international component. And yes, the South Asian community in Canada has grown significantly, and many people have either relatives or friends that are here. They see the value of Canadian education. They see the importance of Canadian education. And by taking our program abroad, it will give them that leg up that they otherwise would not have if they didn't do it.
So they can register from any part of the world directly online with you?
Yes.
And undergo this training?
We are very fortunate that our platform allows for not only registration and payment, but also for scheduling. You will actually know when you would be able to deal with an instructor, and we are very flexible. We also have what I would call banking educational opportunities, where we would do a program on, I did a series, for example, on former prime ministers, where you would do a 30, 40-minute program just for information purposes. So again, it allows people both at home and abroad to understand some unique aspects of Canadian culture, Canadian society.
That's wonderful.
We'll be right back after these messages.
We are doing a television special with Hon.Bryon Wilfert. You've got a close relationship with TV Ontario, one of the most respectable educational services that I've come across. So tell us a bit about that.
TV Ontario has its own international educational component, which a lot of people are not aware of, using the Ontario curriculum. And we are formalizing now an agreement with them where we will be able to go abroad, particularly in places in India such as Mumbai, where we'll be, or Tamil Nadu. And that'll give us an opportunity also to deal with students in those regions, as well as the United Kingdom and the United States. But TV Ontario, it's a very, very impressive program for education that they have. And again, strengthens our credibility as an organization, also with Amazon as an example. So we are reaching out, and by bringing good players together, we're able to, I think, provide a product where we want to bring the most out of students, but I believe the passion not only for the educator, but passion for the student. There's nothing more, and as a former educator, there's nothing more rewarding when you see that light go on and a student says, yes, I understand that, or wow, I didn't know that could be done. I feel so good. And nothing more rewarding for me, years later, to still hear from students who say, because of you, I went on and I did this in the foreign service, or I did this in the media. So for me, that is what we want from our educators in particular, is to bring out the most out of them, and that's why these alliances are absolutely critical.
It's fascinating for me to hear you talk about passion, because you've gone a full circle. Your passion for education was, needless to say, very strong, and then you went into municipal politics. You were quite passionate about that, if I remember, and you went into federal politics, and you were quite passionate there as well. So you've now come back to education. So tell me about this transition between the two, and what gives you the most satisfaction?
Well, I always say I've never worked a day in my life because I've enjoyed every moment.
Right.
Education, again, the imparting of knowledge to people, I think, is absolutely key. And you do that as an educator, but you also do that as a politician. I think sometimes good politicians come from the educational background because they're used to speaking in front of students, they're in front of people.
Right.
I know people who are very nervous. Even politicians are nervous about speaking in front of students because they haven't had that experience. But you can't fake passion. You either love what you're doing or you don't. And you're certainly an excellent example of that, in a leader in your industry.
Thank you.
But I know that the full circle is now that I'm back to education, sort of a mixture of education and still politics, in the sense that you have to explain what you're doing. You have to get people to embrace the concept of what you're doing, particularly when it's not the physical school that we're all used to. But at the end of the day, when I look back at my career as an educator, I think I'm a better politician because of my educational background, and I think I'm better now in education because of my political background, and that I understand the needs. When I was the president of the Canadian Parks and Recreation Association, we worked with children or youth at risk. And a lot of people don't understand that you may have a structured basketball program during the day, but not every student or child can do that during the day. Maybe they're doing it at 11 o'clock at night. So we look at pickup basketball as an example. So having had those experiences in many ways has made me better understand today what I'm doing and with the team that we have in terms of providing a CTL education.
A very interesting designation, the Institute of Corporate Directors designation from Rotman's, prestigious, from the University of Toronto. Tell us about it.
Well, I decided I wanted to take that particular program, which was, I think, one of the most intensive, most interesting programs I've taken, because it brought together people from diverse communities. We had people from Walmart, we had people from Four Seasons Hotels, etc., all in the same room. And what we did is we were able to talk about, if you want to be a good member of a board of directors,
right,
by having the ICD.D designation, it allowed me to really understand in depth, not only more about business, but also how things are put together in business from not only from a policy standpoint, but from an execution standpoint. And in the end, I had to do a live board meeting, which was the easy part. The part that was, I thought, challenging, which turned out not to be so, was I had to talk about online education. I had to do an online exam, which I'd never done before. And we had an hour to do it. You had to get at least 66%, and you pressed the button, it would tell you automatically within the hour how you did. It was all multiple choice, which I'm a writer. I don't like multiple choice. And we had 50 multiple choice questions. And in order to do that, that was an interesting experience for me. I then went on to be on the board of directors for the ICD Institute for York Region, which I was eventually the vice chair of. And I must say that work at the Rotman School, again, helped me particularly in business, because now I understand more, and the exchange of ideas in that classroom setting was fantastic. It was very intensive. I remember when the first binder came, I thought, well, there's a lot of work here. Turned out there were 4 more binders like that came. But it was certainly a great experience for me.
So the governance that you really picked up from there tremendously helped you in terms of being a visionary in the education field as a business itself.
Absolutely. Governance is absolutely critical, and I think too many people don't understand what good governance is. When you're on a board of directors, you're a policymaker. You're not implementing. That is up for the staff to do, for the administrators. And so understanding good corporate governance, and whether that's corporate governance in business or whether it's governance in government itself, is key. So understanding the nuances and the challenges and the opportunities, that certainly helped me and has certainly helped me in my current role.
Well, you were a visionary. You saw that way before when you got your master's degree in political economy. So hearty congratulations to you. You have really put that to use as well.
Yes, I have. Thank you so much.
We truly want to wish you all the best with CTL education, and keep up the great work you're doing, and we look forward to having you back in the studio sometime soon.
Thank you very much, Ann. And again, my very best to you. And what a change from Newmarket you have done here in Markham. This is an incredible facility, state of the art. And then again, it's a credit to your vision, but also your hard work.
Thank you. Thank you. Truly appreciate that. Coming from you, that's a real compliment. We appreciate that. We'd love to have you back soon.
Thank you very much.
And all the best.
Thank you.